Welcome, everyone. The webinar will begin at 12:30 Eastern and will be recorded. Connect with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account at Reading by Third. Please use the hashtags GLReading and or GLR Week and or Learning Tuesdays to tag us or tweet anything you learned from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet it. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. So once again, on Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account at Reading by Third. The webinar will begin shortly. It will be recorded and shared with you afterwards.
Hi, everybody. I think we're about to start. Jerry, can you go to the next slide? Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are located. My name is Jill Fioravanti. I'm a senior consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you very, very much for joining us for this Fishbowl conversation on reaching and supporting parents through 211. This session is the third in the campaign's sponsored discussions as part of our virtual GLR week, which will extend throughout the week, and we'll show you some of the upcoming discussions that we're going to be having in a minute or so. We sincerely want to welcome all the United Ways on the line. There are about 200 United Ways that are part of CGLR, or Campaign for Grade Level Reading, coalitions around the country, and more than 60 coalitions are led by United Ways. This is a long-standing relationship that goes back to our early launch almost 10 years ago, and we're just really thankful that you're all on the phone. We also really would like to welcome those who represent organizations that run 211s and other kinds of organizations and leaders who have joined us today. You can go to the next slide. So as Jerry, my colleague, mentioned before we started, we just want you to take note of our social media tags at Reading by Third, at Campaign for GLR, hashtag GLR Reading, GLR Learning Tuesdays, and GLR Week. Please follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and feel free to share these out through your own social media as well. We are also live streaming this to Facebook, which we've been starting to do more recently, so you're able to access it there as well. I've been noticing a bunch of people using the chat box function to introduce yourself. Please keep it up. We'd love to know who's on the line. And we have a poll that we're going to be running as well. So Jerry, if you want to run the poll, this gives us a little bit of a sense of who is in the room. So if you see that poll pop up on your screen, which I think it just did, please go ahead and fill that out, and we'll be able to show the results shortly. So a few housekeeping tips. All of our webinar attendees will be participating in listen-only mode during the conversation. And we'll stress this several times, we really encourage your active involvement throughout the hour and a half. And we invite you to share any thoughts, reflections, questions in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen. We are going to try, as I review the Q&A box throughout the next 90 minutes, to unmute people here and there to be able to ask their question, but we do still need to see the question. So if you have a question, please write it in the Q&A, and we'll be trying to figure out a way with Alicia and with Jerry as our producer to unmute you to be able to ask a question if we can. But please definitely use the Q&A box to do that. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be shared with everyone who registered. We will have a survey at the end of the session to give us an evaluation on how this went, so please stay through to be able to fill that out. We included links to the slides and bios of our discussants they're in the chat box, so you can access those, and those were also linked in a reminder email that you should have gotten this morning. You can go to the next slide. So this spring, because of COVID-19, we were forced to shift gears. We originally were going to have an in-person conference this week in Washington, D.C. And so we shifted gears and changed our plans for GLR Week 2020. So we've gone virtual, and it actually offered us a number of exciting opportunities to engage people that would not have otherwise maybe been able to travel to DC to join us in person, and to lift up the work that's happening, not just nationally, but that's happening in communities and states around the country. And you'll be hearing from Texas, or Salt Lake City, and Delaware today as 3 examples of more than 20 states and communities around the country that have been participating throughout GLR Week with us. What's listed on here are the sessions that we have that we're sponsoring as part of GLR Week and that we're supporting through our platforms. I did just want to note we have a new edition on Friday the 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern, COVID-19 and Education, Ensuring Equity as we Address COVID-19 Learning Loss. This is sponsored by McKinsey & Company, and we're glad to be able to provide information on that as well. I'll be putting in the chat box the links to be able to register to GLR Week sessions moving forward. You can also visit the GLR website, which is gradelevelreading.net, to learn about all these sessions and to register that way. If you can go to the next slide. We're really excited about, as I mentioned, the response we've gotten across the country to our call to action and our call to involvement from GLR communities and states all over. So this is a map that we created that can show you a little bit about what's happening across the country related to GLR Week this week. And I'll include in the chat box a link to the map, so you'll be able to drill down on your state or your community or the day of the week and really get a sense of some of the different things that are happening to address early school success, elevating parents, and addressing learning loss at this really unprecedented time. So to all of those who represent any of these activities that are on the line, we're really thankful and glad that you're participating in this. You can go to the next slide. So we have an ongoing GLR Learning Tuesday webinar series. We're just showing here the remaining sessions for the month of July, but these are offered every Tuesday from 3 to 4:30 Eastern or 12 to 1:30 Pacific. We really encourage you, if you haven't already participated in a GLR Learning Tuesday, to do so. We'll provide information for how you can register. And this is really our ongoing way to connect around learning and engagement with our network. And our network really we define fairly widely. So we'd really love to have you involved if you haven't before. The next slide. So in addition to GLR Learning Tuesdays, we also have a funder to funder conversation series. The first one just launched yesterday. And then we have 2 more coming up, one with the Heising-Simons Foundation, lifting up family and community math, another with the Buffett Early Childhood Fund, lifting up early education workforce issues. So for those funders on the line, and United Ways are certainly counted in that, we really would love to have you involved with these. We're really excited about this series as a way to really look intentionally at linking national philanthropy and local and different kinds of philanthropy, and have them work together more collaboratively and learn and share with each other. So that's really what this is all about. I'm going to go to the next slide. So actually, Jerry, do we have, before I just introduce our moderator and our discussants, do we have our poll results that we can pull up? Hold on one sec while he does that. There we go. All right, so we have about 50% of those who responded work at United Ways that lead a 211. Great. We have a few non-United Way organizations that lead 211 efforts. We have United Ways that are not leading 211s, but and then we have about 30 folks that are not any of these but interested. So good. This gives our discussants a good sense of who's in the room, and we appreciate everyone's response on that. All right, so you can go to the next slide and close the poll up. I tried to do that. Okay, so I'm really excited to be able to introduce our moderator and our discussants. Alicia Lara is Senior Vice President for Impact at United Way Worldwide. There she is. She introduced the campaign to the term Fishbowl, so we're really excited now to be able to use that term moving forward. And what I love about that is it really does give this image of all of us on the line, including the campaign, a chance to learn and listen and hear from our discussants and through our moderators' eloquent facilitation, a way to really think about this issue and the timeliness of this issue and the potential of this issue of leveraging 211s. in new and unique ways. So we're really excited to have Alicia with us to be able to moderate the conversation. And all of the bios are also in the chat box, the link, as well as were sent earlier today. You can go to the next slide. We have 3 discussants who are going to be leading the way over the next hour plus. Adriana Cuellar Rojas is president and CEO of United Ways of Texas. There she is. Michelle Taylor is president and CEO of United Way of Delaware. And Amy Terpstra, vice president, Collective Impact Partnerships with United Way Salt Lake. I'll just say briefly, this session really came about through a conversation between Adriana and Ralph Smith, our managing director, when they were talking about some of the work that's happening with the United Ways connected with the campaign. So thank you to Adriana for getting the ball rolling on this. Michelle has a deep history with United Way and also with early school success. So we're really excited to have that bridge be made here. And Amy comes at this work from a background of applied research and partnership building, which is just essential to be able to do 2-1-1 work effectively. So these are just top-notch folks. Their bios are very impressive and are listed in that chat box for you to download. Last reminder, please include your questions in the Q&A box. If you have other observations, please put them down. Once the discussants, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia. She's going to give a little bit of context in the broader 2-1-1 sense. Each of our discussants are going to be saying a bit, and then there's going to be some questions that they're going to cover, and then we're going to turn it over to you. So we really would love to get your thoughts in that Q&A box so that we have your thinking in the room, and this can be as engaging as possible. So with that, I'll turn it over to Alicia.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Buenos días, buenas tardes, bienvenidos. Welcome, everyone. I'm always excited to be engaged and working side by side with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. They are an exciting, longtime partner. I'm so proud of the many United Ways that are directly involved with the campaign. And are helping move forward this very serious and potential for exciting issue. So first, I always want to thank the United Ways that are on the line, that are here, those 2-1-1s that are our close partners, and to our partners who work with United Way and with 2-1-1. You are making it happen on the ground, and always interested in your insights. And so your questions in the Q&A and our ability to bring some folks live to engage as well. The Fishbowl concept really is about having conversations. So low on presentation and high on just interaction. And so it's an ability for people to circle around and actually jump into the aquarium with us with your questions and observations and ideas. So just as a quick level set, 2-1-1 was birthed about 20 years ago in Atlanta with United Way there. So if Atlanta, you're in the house, you are the founding mother. Thank you. It started simply as a information referral line and just grew powerfully. Today, there are about 240 2-1-1s in the US and about another 80 in Canada. In the US, we got about 96% of the country covered by 2-1-1. And about half of those 2-1-1s are operated within the walls of a local United Way. The other half are independently operated with either United Way funding it or partnering with that local 2-1-1. Those independent 2-1-1s could be a community resource center. It could be embedded in a public health department or health and human services. Great partnerships with the state. And so we're going to be hearing about that from Delaware and in Texas as well. So the growth of 2-1-1, I would say, as we're moving into this 21st century, 20 years in now, is that it has gone from a sort of basic information referral line to being a powerful tool for local communities to access resources. Some of it is still people calling 2-1-1. Increasingly, it's about online engagement with folks. And now we're starting to really look at how 211 can serve as a partner to support issues in a back and forth. So not just in a one way, we're going to give out referrals and then we'll see what happens, but really start looking at ways in which we can support communities more powerfully. And that's the conversation we want to have. And so increasingly, because of COVID, but even before that, as parents are seeking supports, they may contact 211 because they're experiencing some sort of issue right in front of them, whether it's a fear of eviction or wanting to know where the food bank is or wanting to get some help on something else. Increasingly, we're seeing 211s engaging around, are there kids in the house? You know, what's, you know, and getting information. So what I would say kind of pushing in. And this is leading to really some powerful examples of 211, both informing the United Way so that they can adjust their impact work and looking at how they can start engaging in a back and forth with clients to make sure that clients are getting services, to make sure that they're getting connected to the right sets of services, and then using that data to then start talking to state legislators, to local and city legislators, and even at the federal level to get additional support. So that's the conversation we want to have today. So with that, let me actually then just go ahead and turn to Amy from United Way in Salt Lake to talk about the specific work that they're doing with parents and families.
Thanks so much, Alicia. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy. I use she, her pronouns. You know, I should preface everything that I'm about to tell you in this conversation by acknowledging that I did not come up through the 211 system and world. And nor is that my kind of core function, is to be over 211 at our United Way. I am over all of our cradle to career collective impact partnerships. So the fact that I'm here talking about 211, I think is really just evidence of how much our 211 is evolving and how much we're seeing it as absolutely central to our education and to our social determinants work. So I just want to take you back super quickly to the beginning of the pandemic to paint a bit of a picture for you about how this has all been playing out. So our community in our organization went to a work from home scenario right around March 13. So we had to get our information specialists in 211 set up to work remotely pretty much overnight. That's probably true for a lot of you. And we were able to do that. We had an amazing team, an amazing support team that helped really make that happen. So that all happens around March 13. Then you guys, we had an earthquake here on March 19, March 18 rather. So, you know, we just, you know, it was one of those scenarios where we're thinking, you know, what else could possibly go wrong? But our 211 was met with an influx of calls for the earthquake, as you can imagine. So water outages, power outages, you know, people needing shelter and food, all sorts of things that happened with the earthquake. People needing support. Like, I'd never been through an earthquake myself, and it was quite unsettling. So we have increased call volume there. And then just COVID specific, we're getting, you know, double call volume in March and in April related to COVID related concerns. So that's all happening over on the 211 side of our shop. And then on my side of the shop, what we're seeing is that as schools go into distance learning, we're hearing that there's no good data on this. We're hearing that in some classrooms, up to 80% of kids aren't connecting with their classroom. Their teachers haven't heard from them. And we're getting so many just different concerns that are coming up for our partnerships and for parents around, you know, what that means for their academics, what that means for their social emotional learning, what that means for enhanced push out, where kids just, because of all of the ways that school systems don't already work for kids of color and low-income students and English language learners, that this situation is just going to further push students out, and especially for the older kids, have them just not return. So this all illuminated this major fracture in our education system that had always been there, like we all know that, but it just shone a spotlight on it. So in my side of the shop, we began planning we had a plan with kind of two sister initiatives. The first initiative was to help bridge that learning. And so we were really trying to bridge learning over the summer, but really over this kind of gaping hole in our system that all the kids and families were falling into. And I'm going to tell you about that mostly. Then the other side of this is we're really focusing on how we can reimagine education to be fundamentally more equitable in the long term. But on the bridging learning side, we stood up an initiative called Stay Safe, Stay Connected. Really, Stay Safe, Stay Connected is a public messaging campaign. We're encouraging families to continue teaching their kids over the summer and offering support to families that might need it. So Jerry, if you can pull up those slides, you'll see sort of the simple message that the initiative is putting out there into the world. Continue learning, and there's supports to help you because this is hard. And just call 211 and we can get you connected to a variety of different resources. We have this in English, Spanish, and a variety of other languages. So the next slide, you can see it in Spanish. But the supports that we really wanted to offer to families were pretty varied. We knew that school districts in our region have some really good COVID-safe in-person programs, and their preference, every superintendent I talked to said, push the families to us first. We have these programs and we want to fill them up. And then nonprofit partners were saying, we can run second point on that. After we fill up those school district programs, we can come in and we can provide COVID-safe options for in-person learning over the summer. And then because there's just a kind of straight up capacity issue, even then, because of distancing, we felt it was important to stand up virtual offerings. So we stood up and helped expand some mentor and tutor opportunities. And we're pushing families to those. And then we needed a way to get families connected to devices, internet, and tech support that they might need, both now in the summer and going into the school year. And then we wanted to make sure we could get families connected to those basic needs supports. So the key question in front of us as we pulled all this together was, how can we get those resources to families? How can we build something literally in 4 weeks, which is what we were gunning for here. And Michelle is nodding. She's like, yeah, you're gonna hear from her about how they did this too. How can we stand something up and build it in 4 weeks to really efficiently and effectively connect families to all of those things? So, we didn't have to build something new. That was sort of the brilliance of having our 211 infrastructure and our partnership infrastructure under the United Way of Salt Lake roof. So we had the beautifulness that is 211 right in front of us. So we ended up having this great team of people on our staff bring together the resources, all those different resources that I mentioned, figure out what already exists in the community, document it in a way that we could just bake it right into the 211 database. Then we trained our information specialists up on the new workflow. And then we built out client information captures because some of the resources we need to connect families with are still sort of in development. Like we don't have all the laptops we need right now to deploy in our community. So our team did this in 4 weeks. We started the project in June. It launched last week officially. And I think that there's so much that we can dig into together about this effort that I'm really excited to compare notes with Michelle and Adriana and the rest of you on. But I think just a couple quick things that come to mind for me in terms of lessons learned in doing this is, the first is that 211 is flexible. I don't think we had always thought of it as being as incredibly flexible as it turned out to be, but it's a central piece of getting families what they need efficiently and effectively, and it can and is able to relatively easily go far beyond basic needs and emergency supports. Our 211 director said to me at the beginning of this, which was only several weeks ago, we just need a long on-ramp for flexing 211 in this way, but they didn't. Like at the end of the day, it happened in several weeks. And then I think, just this idea of the strong partnership between 211 and our cradle to career work. In our case, it's all under one roof. But if we hadn't been under one roof, having that really strong partnership between those things, I think that enables the global us to do things like this to meet the needs in our community really quickly, because we have the relationships with the programs, with the education partners on our side of the shop, and we have the system and the talent on the 211 end of our shop to kind of combine to make something happen really awesomely and really quickly for our community. So I'll pause there and I guess, turn it back over to Alicia to guide us.
Great. Thanks, Amy. And for everyone, to Amy's point, if you have examples, if you're a United Way in which the 211 lives outside and in the community somewhere else, if you've got examples of some of that kind of partnership, please put it into even the Q&A or chat. We would love to just learn more from you around this. So right now, let me turn it over to Michelle from United Way of Delaware, and talk about it. What work you guys have been doing in this space, Michelle?
First of all, I wanted to say, I tell my colleagues all the time, if you thought of a great idea, usually someone else has already thought of it, right? And so we had no idea that there were other communities thinking about the same thing. And actually, had we known, it might have helped us to even accelerate some of the pace and the thinking of the work. So I want to thank the network, right, and the campaign for pulling us together, because I feel like we have some new best friends during this journey. So I am leading a United Way that I have been here for over the last 20 years and seen a lot of transformation from that fundraising to a community impact organization. Our 211 is a part of our United Way. So it's interesting. It was a part of it from inception. They spun it off into a helpline, into a separate entity. And I had the pleasure of acquiring it back about 10 years ago. And so it is now under one roof, all part of the United Way brand. We had kept a wonderful relationship and partnership, but we had the right opportunity in order to bring it back in-house. And I think for us, why this work is important is COVID. Like I always want to tell you this. So I always say there's a silver lining in every cloud. And I think during the COVID, it really shined a light on 211s. 211s I thought were already amazing, but a lot of people didn't know or hadn't heard still of 211. But in our community, and I know we're one of the 2 statewide United Ways in the 1100 plus network, right? So we have the opportunity to do things for the entire state. And so one of the things that we have been able to do is we partner with our emergency management assistants. And as they were getting an influx of calls, both them and through our Department of Health and Human Services, they intentionally wanted to direct all of the calls for the state into 211. And so that helped significantly, right, to increase our presence when our governor actually did some press conferences online. I had no idea he was doing this, but he had the 211 logo and the United Way logo behind him and part of his press release. And we were all jumping up and down, kind of going crazy, going, wow, like who knew that would help. But in our work with COVID, we currently right now connect to our governor's office, to public health, to DEMA, to Department of Health and Human Services, to our state service centers. Every day we give them a report about what's happening in COVID, what's happening the day before, what's happening with the calls. And we intentionally have been set up, not just as an information and referral, but my team has been very intentional about how do we help people. So on the United Way side, we also had set up a strategic response fund in partnership with the Delaware Community Foundation. And so we raised incremental funds to ensure, right, that there were resources to help people keep a roof over their head and food and shelter and all of those basic needs. And we start thinking about the importance of that, because right now, if someone calls us and there's a family, our 211 staff tries to help. And if they can't, we work collaboratively with the state to try to address that individual's needs. So, think about it from a customer service perspective. When people are in crisis, they don't want to be, they don't want the runaround, right? They don't want us to call a whole bunch of different places. And so literally someone can call now, a parent, and say they're homeless and they're living in their car. We will have put funds to help them to go into a hotel and then connect them to the state to go and provide the food. And then we'll work together to get them a longer term housing solution. And it is working amazing. And so one of the things that we said is, wow, we're doing such a great job on helping families at a micro and macro level during COVID that we would have never helped pre-COVID. Why can't we do that same thing on an educational side? So flipping where our United Way side, where we are strategically been trying to work on whole child, whole family, 2 generational strategies, trying to be able to get the parents through the kids. And so what we intentionally did is said, wow, parents are calling us and we are actually helping them to pay their rent, help with utilities, help with their food. Why aren't we also beginning to capture, I think Alicia might have said this, or Amy, start saying, do you have a child under 18? What districts are they in? What schools are they in? How are we best meeting the needs? And so as we were getting that information, we had to decide, what are we going to do with it? And how do we have the infrastructure? How do we build the legs to it? In our state, we worked with about 8 districts that intentionally said, we're too busy right now trying to figure out how we're going to do graduations, what we're going to do in the summer, how we're going to reopen. It would be extremely helpful if United Way, in partnership with 211 and other community partners, could figure this out. If you could collaboratively figure out how do you best serve kids and families and feed that information to us, it would be a big asset. So what we did is we said, okay, we have to agree, like Alicia, that we're going to be building the plane and flying it at the same time. If we're willing to collectively, to not let perfection get in the way of progress. If we know that there's a need and together we're willing to put 211 out there and United Way, together we believe that we're going to do it. But we asked to build the same thing in our education's front. So the districts have identified point people, just like the state did, so that if someone's calling us within a district, that they have a family that may have, don't have technology, that we can then work with that district collaboratively to meet the needs of that family. And so that collectively, we're trying to make sure that both their basic needs are being helped and their academic needs. And so Jerry, if you quickly put up our slide that so we officially Monday. So we did a soft launch, and we're doing it in partnership. I don't know if you can see it at the bottom of the screen with some school districts, with our Department of Education, with our Get Delaware Reading, which is equivalent to our campaign for grade level reading. And we are now set up to be, put the infrastructure in place to add legs to better help kids and families. And so my feedback to us as a sector is, the reality is we have the capacity. We were already doing the work. It really just required us to think differently about how we align and we integrate. If we get out of our comfort zones and willing to take some risk, right, where we won't let perfection get into the way of progress, we believe that we're better positioned to meet the needs of both kids and families within our communities.
Great. And I'm seeing already, to your very first point, Michelle, people are asking for your materials, both you and Amy's assets and materials collateral. So if you'd be so inclined to be able to share those so people can customize them for their community. First, I would encourage people to reach out directly to Michelle and Amy, but if there's any way that you all can share those assets, that would be great. And also, as Jill pointed out, we're going to send out the slides immediately following this, so no worries about that. Let me turn to Adriana. So first of all, I see that Ralph Smith's on the line. Hello, Ralph. I know you're trying to hide amongst all the people, but we see you. Not really see you, but know that you're there. So Adriana, this is your baby. Like in a casual conversation, you and Ralph cooked this thing up. So I'm going to turn to you and ask you about, you know, Texas is a state country unto itself, and you're having to work in all of that milieu. I'm wondering if you can talk about your role. Michelle alluded to it, so both of you are sort of teaming on this one, but really for you to talk about 211 in Texas and working in these big systems.
Sure, thanks for having me. And I think I want to clarify that our role as the United Way State Association is very different than what you just heard from Amy and Michelle in Utah and Delaware. And so you know, for us, we don't manage 211, we don't fund 211. The role that we really play in Texas is one of advocacy and support. So in Texas, just a little bit of background, or even further past Texas, just so that you know. So hopefully everybody here knows, but I find it helpful because 211 was new to me when I joined United Ways of Texas 6 years ago. But the FCC really designated 211 at the national level to be a 3-digit number. And then it really has across the country up to those communities how they manage, structure, and fund 211. And so what you really have is this mishmash of structures and how this operates. But you also, on the flip side, you have a lot of opportunity to learn from all of the different setups, right? And so in Texas, we have a really unique situation in that back in 1997, we collectively, because it was not me, I was not here, but we in the broader sense, advocated for 211 to become a statewide public system. And so in Texas, 211 is managed and housed within our state. So it is our Public Utility Commission is the one that is in statute, and their rules actually designate our umbrella Health and Human Services state agency as the manager of 211 in Texas. They contract with 25 call centers and manage the statewide database. 13 of those call centers are run by local United Ways, including some of that are tuned in today. I saw some folks from some of our local United Way 211 call centers, and including the United Way Greater Houston, which happens to be the largest call center in the country. So we're very, we have embraced 211 in Texas in a very different way. And I would say, I love the perspective that Amy offered about 211 being very flexible. For us in Texas, I would say we have challenges and opportunities, right? We have wonderful strengths in our 211 system, in it being housed within our state agency, and that we have a steady line of revenue that is going to those 211 operating center or local centers. And that's fantastic. The challenges, I would say, is that as with any government entity, no matter where you are, it is very difficult to be nimble. It is very difficult to be. And so, for Texas, we currently are not necessarily being innovative and flexible in serving families with young children. But, and so you might be asking, like, why is Texas here as a panelist? Yeah, I learned my lesson. Don't bring something up to Ralph. But all joking aside, I actually think that the reason why we're here is we really play the importance of the role of advocacy. And you guys know, as United Ways, how important that is to our business model: give, advocate, volunteer, right? But also advocacy in the broadest sense can mean a lot of different things. And so, in Texas right now, we have a couple opportunities that have really been synergistic prior to COVID, that really are causing us to lean in and be really optimistic about how we think 211 can look down the road for Texas. So first of all, Texas was recently designated we recently received a Pritzker Foundation statewide prenatal to 3 grant, and included in that as one of our goals was to bring additional information to parents. And what better way to do that than through 211? And so we are hopeful that over the next 3 years, in having the Pritzker grant, we will be able to partner. And I really like what both our colleagues in Utah and Delaware highlighted about the importance of relationships and partnerships, because that is key to getting this work done. And so it is through a lot of partnerships. We're bringing a lot of different people to the table, because actually during COVID, our governor actually worked with several state agencies to quickly prop up something that we had wished had happened a long time ago. And that's a state website that posts in real time open childcare spots. And it has been fantastic. There are a lot of local sites that have been available for a while because of a lack of a statewide site. So now the question is, long term, how do we integrate the local with the state, and how do we integrate 211 and the 211 resources with that, right? And so again, there's a lot of opportunities that are fantastic policy opportunities. The last opportunity I would mention that is presenting itself in Texas, in addition to the learning loss with COVID that was highlighted by Amy and Michelle, is that our state has recently stepped into a role of serving officially as a Help Me Grow lead. And so we're not sure what that's going to look like. We're moving down that path and watching the state roll this out. But we know that Help Me Grow and we identifies the importance of a single point of entry, right? And information being spread to families. And so we really do collectively as United Ways across our state really do feel like there's a lot of opportunity for Texas to be for 211 to be the front door for families with young children. And that we can, regardless of what we're highlighting, whether it's childcare, whether it's ECI, child development information, whether it's learning loss, there are opportunities for 211 to hand parents information and connect them to deeper resources. And so we're really excited about the role that we can play in advocating for that, and interested to see how things grow from the roles that Utah and Delaware are playing with learning loss and connecting people to technology, students to technology, and addressing those needs, because we certainly know that those are present everywhere across the country and including in Texas. So we're excited to be on this panel to have be part of the discussion. We don't have the answers yet in Texas, but we know that we have to, and I would challenge all of us to think about 211 differently. And we've really got to think about how we can maybe turn it on its head as we're thinking about how we recreate education systems, how we recreate workplace, how are we ensuring that families with young children are connected in a very easily accessible way to services. Can think of no better way than through the nice 3-digit number of 211.
Great. Thank you, Adriana. And I want to zero in. I've seen some of the questions that are coming in through the chat and the Q&A. So let's just launch into that. What I am going to do, though, is because it's a fishbowl, we're just going to have conversation. There are a number of questions that are coming in around funding. How do you fund this? And it seems to me, as what I've noticed is that as 211 has evolved, I've noticed in COVID, as in any disaster, 211 ends up on, whether you know it or not, Michelle, if you might not even know, but all of a sudden your governor, your state level FEMA type of person has 211 right there. And it's become the 211 sort of the go-to. And sometimes they fund it and sometimes they don't let you know. And, you guys get flooded with calls. We all get flooded with calls around that. COVID created this different kind of disaster. But what I'm finding in this one, and you guys all alluded to it, is that people are double taking on 211 going, oh, wait, there's a disaster, but there are other things. Now, I think a lot of 211s have been raising their hands and jumping up and down and saying, hey, we can be powerful in the information referral space, and we have this expanded narrative about ourselves. So, Michelle, Amy, I'll start with you. One, there's some questions around how you're funding these particular efforts, but what revenue opportunities have emerged through this experience?
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? So I would just say for us, our state is an amazing partner. So they have helped us to increase capacity. So one of the things they did is when they had an 800 number that they turned off and start directing people to us for 211. And then if we can't solve it, remember, they have a group of grassroots individuals that will go in the community. So we're working cohesively, so it's like a comprehensive strategy together. So that came with resources and people that we got right before COVID. And right now, and we're going through this, if I say I need a couple more people to meet the capacity, you know, this may end someday, but right now our state is an amazing partner to help us to figure out on the Department of Social Services, because collectively we're trying to be able to better serve Delawareans. So it really is like a collective strategy. Now, on the education front, what we did is we also said, look, when we think on the United Way, when I think about our goals I presented to the board over the next 12 months, I said, look, families are we normally are talking about getting people empowerment, right? Go from people giving people a fish to teaching people a fish. The reality is unemployment rate is crazy, I'm sure, across the state. So it's really going to be about how do we help families go from crisis to stability. And in doing that, we reallocated our staffing, our infrastructure within United Way to provide additional supports to 211 in this area. And so I don't see it as new work. I just see it as a different way to do the work that is most important. We also have connected it to our racial equity and social justice work, that there will be some funds that will come with that. And by connecting it to the districts, we ultimately think some of our districts will ultimately invest in the infrastructure for 211 once we actually get the data, right? So once it's actually flying and that we can actually demonstrate that there's value and that there's information that is demonstrating that together we're better supporting families and kids, and that together we're getting the outcomes. We talked a lot about this, is what are the outcomes? How are kids better prepared? How are they reading? They want us to call it unfinished learning. So we want to be relentless for the next 12 to 18 months. And this is kind of maybe how far we'll go, that says, we know that our kids already had an achievement gap. We know with COVID, they had this recovery loss. We know that the summer with the summer learning slide. And so in our community, we said kids don't like to be called remediated. So we want to call it unfinished learning that is a result of that. And so that will be the data and the facts. And I'm fairly confident that if we can deliver on the outcomes, additional funding will further support the infrastructure that will really reshape, at least in our community, how 211 is an integrated part of our community.
Yeah, I'm going to want to come back to data and outcomes in a second, but Amy, let me turn to you on this question. So there was a straight up question, how'd you get that funded? And same question to you, what do you see as opportunities in this space to grow revenue or to support the work?
Yeah, so not entirely dissimilar to Michelle. We have a good relationship with our state. Maybe not as good. I don't know if we can just go and say, hey, we need 3 more people, but we get state funding, which provides a nice foundation. And then for these sort of expansions and flexing of 211, a few things are true. One is we are beginning to think of all of our fundraising more holistically. So instead of just fundraising for 211 and just fundraising for our partnerships work, we're trying to break down that silo. And so we've really been pushing ourselves, especially in the last year, I would say, to think about baking 211 support into every grant and every kind of investment opportunity that we're seeking. So that's been helpful. And then CARES Act money, like we don't have it yet, but we're trying to get it. So figuring out those levers, like who has the pots of money, has been a little bit difficult. But there's education CARES Act money that kind of came down through states, through the governor's office, and our state landed with our state board of education. So that's a possibility. And then there's money that went directly to local governments. So right now we're in a conversation about how some of those funds could support the broader initiative, of which 211 is a part of. So those are the 2 things I would add to all the great stuff Michelle said.
Yeah. So when we think about data, so Adriana, I'm gonna turn to you, because what I heard underneath Amy and Michelle's responses is the power of data then to show to those folks at the city, county, state level, and even federal level, the importance of 211. So for all of you, I'll start with you, Adriana. What kind of data is meaningful to elected officials? What do they want to see?
So for us, we, again, in Texas, haven't solved cracked that nut yet in terms of 211 data. I wish we had access to the data that the other states are sharing. But, you know, I think it is so important for our decision makers, and whether those are elected officials or whether they are funders, philanthropists, or business, to have the right kind of information about community needs. You know, having information like that shows up like in 211 counts or in other dashboards that exist that highlight calls and who is calling for what at what time in real time is fantastic. And being able to break that down, we hope one day in Texas we'll be able to get there to have that. But I think that in addition to having the data, because the data is really important, and I would love to ask the question of Michelle and Amy on how they're tracking their data of what they're doing right now, like how they're collecting that data from parents. But I think it also is important when you advocate to have the heart story, like, so to balance both of that. And so to answer your question about data, I would also say that 211 is such a strong selling tool in and of itself, to have funders, to have elected officials come to a 211 call centers, see the calls happening, listen in on calls, is such a fantastic, you guys, I don't need to say that to the 211s in the room, but to everybody else, that is such a powerful tool that we have experienced, and I'm sure others, it can open eyes and change minds. But I would say you have to balance both the heart and the head. And would love to hear from Michelle and Amy on this new effort. How are you guys tracking your data that you're collecting from parents as they're calling in?
Yeah, we're doing it in a bunch of different ways. So again, leveraging sort of the broader kind of view of who's on the team and who is pushing forward a project like Stay Safe, Stay Connected. We brought on immediately a couple of data people that we have who primarily have worked on our partnership kind of population level data and performance measure strategy work. And we immediately brought them into the fold and gave them the charge of figuring out a performance measure strategy for Stay Safe, Stay Connected, and baking that into the systems, not just the 211 database and figuring out what we need to get from that, but figuring out how to track not just how many people call or how many people referrals are made to, but trying to connect that to more kind of more outcome focused stuff, right? So can we say something about how we were able to help contribute to kids returning to school no matter what school looks like? Are we able to say something about bridging the digital divide? Are we able to say something, although our state's not doing educational assessments at the moment, like, will we be able to say something about learning loss? And can we kind of combine the how much measures, the how well measures, and the better off measures into a story that kind of talks about not just but our many partners' contributions too. So part of our measurement strategy is thinking about how to measure our partners' contributions to give the full rounded credit when we tell this story. And so it can truly be a community story.
That's great.
And I would echo that. I mean, I want to amplify the last point that Amy said. We really are trying to make this not so much even about 211 and United Way, but about a community story. And so it has, so that people see themselves in the story, right? And that we believe it has to be qualitative and quantitative. So the things that, you know, we're using COVID as our model, right? And so it evolved because remember, we're building this plane and flying it too. But what we clearly have experienced with COVID is we can actually track everyone who's called, and we are doing follow-up. Did their needs get met? And if they didn't, they get elevated up right to this group within the state to try to solve it. And if not, like in the beginning, we had a big issue with homeless. And so eventually we were able to, the state was able to work with hotels, and then we were able to give them vouchers. And that became the solution for our homeless population for about 3 months. And so for this, we need the school districts to agree to do this with us. And so they are open. And so we plan to track the number of calls we get, what types of other reasons do why their parents are calling us, right? How stable are their families? What are the supports that we're providing? What are the gaps that exist that we need to be working on together? So we have agreed we will measure it at the micro level, but we also then want to look at it at a macro level within the district, and then we'll look at it by a macro level within the state to be able to see what advocacy, public policy champion, things that we need to go to for funding, things we might need to go in for policy changes. This is when we're bringing the chiefs together. So our superintendents are a part of this. And so collectively, we'll bring the macro data to them to help us solve some of the big issues together with other community stakeholders, but we're working with their teams at a micro level. Yeah. So for us, it really is about how have we better served families and kids? So how many more families are better prepared and supported to get through the summer? You know, in our state, they just announced, it's so funny, we got 3 options, right? Still, we're going to open, we're going to do a hybrid, or we're going to do virtual. So that was our announcement yesterday. So, you know, we have to prepare still for all 3 lanes. And so what will that look like, and how do we support it, and how will we capture data? And the last thing I will say, at least in our communities with our districts, is that we agreed we would listen to see what they wanted and what they wanted to see out of this, not what we wanted to get out of this. And so we're being very intentional about bringing them to the table and working collaboratively. Because again, I earnestly believe that when they see the value, because they are doing this in other parts of our work related to reading by 3rd grade, they are investing in it. And so I think they will invest in this too. It'll be an extension of that investment.
Exactly. So let me, we're getting some great questions, and we're trying to queue up some folks. We're trying to actually pull them into this fishbowl with us, folks. So just give us a second to kind of set that up. I'm wondering, for you all, what does scale look like? And then for you, scale may be different for all of you. So one, like, what would scale look like? How would you know when you got to that? So I'll any one of you can jump in.
Well, that's a great question. I think about it on a couple levels. First is, I think we have built out Stay Safe, Stay Connected to have the ultimate scale, which is statewide scale across the state of Utah. So any family that calls and hits whatever number they hit when they call or when they go online, and they go through the Stay Safe, Stay Connected path, they will find resources that we have gleaned and pulled together statewide to be connected to. Now, when it comes to some of the other elements, such as the virtual mentoring and tutoring, that we have committed our own resources and staff efforts to spreading and making more available. When it comes to devices that we are fundraising for, getting in-kind donations for, and actually doing the distribution, that sort of necessarily has to be in kind of our service area, our partnership area. So that's more localized. But the other way to think about scale is how many people are we intending to reach through this, and how many families will we get connected to the things that they need for their whole child, whole family situation. And that is actually, that question tripped us up a little bit at the beginning. I mean, a little bit like we only had a couple days to be tripped up about it. And finally, we just said, we're not going to answer that question. Like, we just have to build it and not try to build it for a specific number of people. And we are going to embody the spirit of continuous improvement. And we are going to scale our ability to get devices, to get school supplies, to bring other partners on board as we understand more about what demand could be. Yeah. So that's been our approach. We just sort of said, we can't sit here and try to come up with the best data that kind of doesn't exist and figure out our best estimates for how many people we're going to need to serve through this initiative, because this is unprecedented on many levels. So we're just going to roll with it, has been our approach.
just to underscore, because all of you have said it in one way or another, this nimbleness, I mean, for better or worse, the United Way culture is to take longer time to figure stuff out and answer every single question. And it's a huge risk. Michelle, you keep saying, people, it's scary to build a plane while you're flying it, or, you know, to fly the plane while you're building it. That's a pretty scary proposition. And yet you gotta do it. You just do. So when you want to get, you're going to naturally trip up, and Amy, I love the way you put it. Like, we only have a couple of days to trip over that. Let me just actually give someone a chance. Celia Leong, are you on? You had a question. You're going to be on audio.
Yeah.
Hi.
So nice to hear you and see you again. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Cecilia.
So, yeah, I had a question for probably more Michelle and Amy. But how is the data you're gathering about families with school-age children informing districts in their planning for the fall? Because there's been a lot of work and scrambling in the spring around, do we have devices? Do we have internet? But I think even more deeply than that is, do we know how to use this stuff? And how do we help my child, right? So can you give some examples about how you're gathering data and using it to help your partners look forward?
Yeah, so this is Michelle. I'll quickly say this, but I'll echo Amy, right? So we just launched this, so we are still early on. So I would say we are definitely in the infancy stages around this, but how we anticipate using it is by proactively working with the districts, remember, at the micro level, as we are experiencing issues one at a time, right? Because they have resource individuals that are responsible for supporting families within the districts. So we're not trying to work around them. We want to be additive. And so we're going to do that collectively, and then we'll aggregate the data to share it across the board. But I think you're exactly right. I think Amy would probably attest to this too. Like we said, we won't yet worry about what questions we'll get. Let's just say somebody calls and does need a device. The question is, do we have enough devices?
Mm-hmm.
We said we will figure that out. We will work directly with the districts and state partners to be able to do it. Again, we won't let perfection stop progress, and we won't let that get in our way of not being supported to families. So what we hope will happen is, we know a lot of the districts have surveyed the parents, and try to get a pulse. One of the advantages to 211 is it is real time. And so we hope to add 3-4 questions when we are working. If parents say they have a child under 18, we're going to be capturing about 3 to 4 pieces of data that the districts think will be helpful for them to know. And not just as they're planning for the fall, but as they're living out the fall and the spring. And if we get this right, beyond that.
That's so fantastic. Thank you.
And maybe I will just add to that, similar, this is all brand new. So we haven't brought anything to anybody yet in terms of the data, but I think there's a few things on my mind. Number one, I am really interested in seeing how many calls and requests for devices we get. And I think we can go back to our districts and say, hey, you told us that you allowed families to keep their devices over the summer. We're hearing very differently. How can we remedy that? And how can we use the existing resources that we know you have and redeploy those to families? So I think there's some very tactical things like that. I think there's more strategic things around viewing education as a community-wide effort and partnership, something that we all share accountability for. And I think the way that we're structuring our initiative with multiple partners, bringing their resources to bear and weaving that all together to support our community's students, I think we'll be able to tell a story there that helps change some hearts and minds to allow better and deeper partnerships and more shared accountability going forward. And then I think that there's a longer term play around digital equity in our community that we have our eye on as well.
Yeah, good, thank you.
I'm going to yield the floor, but I thank you both, and I'd love to follow up with you via email. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, thank you, Cecilia. Thanks for jumping in. I do know, Jill, I know that, and Yoli, I know you're on the line, the campaign did a great Learning Tuesday on digital divide, and I don't know if that's a recording that we can make available. Maybe you can send out a link, but it was a fantastic conversation and an issue definitely that United Ways and 211s can jump into. Let me ask someone else to jump into the fishbowl with us, if you all don't mind. We got San Antonio in the house, United Way of San Antonio, and Jennifer Richardson. You're on. I feel like I'm on radio. You're on, Jennifer.
Oh, okay, great. Can you hear me?
We can. Hi.
Okay, perfect. Hi, thank you all so much. This is a fantastic panel. I believe Adriana mentioned Help Me Grow Texas in her comments. And one of the things that they look at is closing the loop on the referrals. So I just wondered if you all could talk a little bit about your efforts around making sure that the loop on the referral is closed when those referrals are occurring in this wonderful work that you're describing. Thank you.
So this is great. So we also have Help Me Grow in our community too. We managed to Help Me Grow in Delaware. And so learning from that, what we have been doing more during COVID has been closing the loop on every person across the board. So the intent is, you know, back to that beginning, no one wants to call and they not get helped. And so we were able to align. We reshifted some United Way resources to add more capacity to ensure that people were getting callbacks to make sure that they were actually getting helped. And so that'll be one way that we hope to be able to continue to do it. But the other way is that I did mention in our model is that we also have something called Stand By Me, which is our financial coaching models that through the help of the state and some other funders have expanded in the process of expanding. And so we have already been doing a warm lead for the last 2 months, asking people what they like to talk to a coach. And so we're going to be shifting the coaches to be more like navigators. So that coach is going to stay with them, not just in the beginning, but to hopefully work them from the crisis to stability and, you know, thereafter if they wanted to start working on empowerment. So we are building in an infrastructure so that every person who calls, because we don't want parents worrying about how they're going to keep their lights on this month and then next month and then how they're going to pay their mortgage next month. So we're hoping the navigator actually helps to reduce some stress, as to add some additional infrastructure to them so that they're freed up and then can help them figure out what's the educational supports that they need. But this coach will be their coach for several months.
Fantastic, thank you.
That's cool. So yes, we through Stay Safe, Stay Connected, there are some warm handoffs that are occurring that are more than just a referral for certain pieces. So there's just a mechanism there to make sure that things happen. We've also more globally sort of built out one of our information specialists. Part of her job is to every day do follow-up calls to people who have called and collect data to see if they were connected, if the referral went through, and what the reasons why or why not were. So we're starting to build a data set to understand that more, that's going to inform a broader effort to become more of a closed loop referral system. So that's all super exciting. And then, you know, I'm intrigued by, Michelle, your, I can't remember what you called it, the Stand By Me program. You know, one of the things, this isn't on the financial front, but one of the things we've been thinking of with Stay Safe, Stay Connected is to model a piece of this after the community health worker model, and to think about community education workers. And so rather than needing that proactiveness on the part of community members to call or to go online or to text 211, not maybe we, but our partners, like we can support our partners who are already built to do this, to go out into the community. And in the same way community health workers connect with families, but on an education front. So we're kind of evolving and kind of batting that idea around too. So I might want to pick your brain a little bit more, Michelle, about your efforts on the financial front there.
Before we invite the next person to jump into the fishbowl, Adriana, let me go back to you. And I'm sorry, remind me of the program in Texas again.
Help Me Grow.
Help Me Grow. So with the close the loop to Jennifer's point, you all then work with district level folks around the information that you're going to the state. So can you say a little bit more about that? Yeah.
Sure. So we're just to clarify, we're just starting to venture into this. The state is starting to venture into this. So we're not sure how it's going to look, but what I think goes back to a question you asked a little while ago about what does scale look like. In Texas, I think we have all these opportunities, and whether it's Help Me Grow or whether it's a child care, information and referral system, or whether it's, helping connect families for ECI, child development services. There's several different strategies, I think, at play that we think our long-term goal is to make sure that our community work is influencing and pushing our state work, and vice versa, right? And so that's part of the role that we play as the state organization, right, along with other partners, some of who are joining us today on the call. But we really want to be sure that we're partnering and making sure it's iterative and respectful of the local services that are going on. So if San Antonio has a program, you just called on San Antonio, that is doing really good work, we want to be sure that we're using that to influence what we're thinking about at the state level. We're not sure what the end game is going to look like yet, because we're still building that plan.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely speaks to the need to have those relationships. I love thinking about it as iterative, not a one and done, but constantly being in communication and in some sense co-creating, like what is it that they need at the state level, and how can United Way and 211s respond to that, but also advocating for what they know communities need. I love that. Let me invite Jenna Hall to jump into the Fishbowl. Jenna, you're going to be on. Tell us where you're from.
I'm from Quincy, Illinois, which is Adams County. Yeah. So the couple of questions I have, first of all, I'll just give you a little background. We are a small Adams County United Way, and our helpline it's not called 211, it's called the helpline, and it's just me. It's a one-woman show, so I answer all the calls and do all of this. So I am so intrigued by this idea of adding in this education piece, but I really didn't know what the best way was for me to get started in that, because we're not doing that now. So my question was, would the best thing to do first off be to maybe just try to meet with the superintendents in the area, or is there a different route? Just give me some options on the best way to get started, maybe.
Oh, that's a great question, Jenna. Also, I'm an Illinois native, so good to see you. My experience with this, like, we obviously are in a very different place than you. We're not a one-person 211 show, nor, and we have this very robust education-focused partnership infrastructure built out in long-standing relationships with superintendents. But our experience was at the beginning of the pandemic, we kept saying to superintendents, how can we help? And they were like, like, don't have time for you. I can't generate more ideas. Like, we are focused on getting food to kids. We are focused on getting distance learning set up. Like, if you want to help, figure out how you can help. And so we figured out how we could help. So we baked an idea. We got our state board to buy into it. They're co-sponsoring Stay Safe, Stay Connected. And then we brought it to the superintendents and said, like, we heard you. You don't have the mental energy to put towards something. So here's the idea. What do you think? And then they were able to engage and say, oh, wait, here's a few ways you could make it better. Oh, here's how we would prefer that you emphasize our district offerings before other offerings. And that worked much better. So I don't know exactly in your context, Jenna, what would be the best first step, but I think my lesson learned from a moment where everyone's running around trying to figure out which way is up is to come to the parties with a value add that is a little bit more baked than we might usually do it, should we want to be co-creating something a little bit more with educators. But the special moment called for a special approach for us.
And the only thing else I would add to that is I would also try to connect with the United Way, who is doing some work in the education space, because they probably already have, or you would hope to have, some of the relationships. So together, right, if you could take this idea and figure out how to be able to maybe bake it in for your community. But I totally echo, you heard me say this earlier, the superintendents are extremely busy right now. Everyone's trying to figure out what they're going to do in the fall. And I think if you could find a space that is additive and they see it as additive, then that's really where the win is.
Thank you. And then my follow-up question to that was, I've heard you guys talk several times about your log and the questions that you need to ask. And I would just be really interested to know what some of those questions were so that we could look at implementing that and adding those to our helpline log.
This is where my lack of 211 background and knowledge fails me a little bit, but I think you're asking for what my team's calling like the script for what, in the workflow, the kind of flow through the 211 system.
Yes, I think so.
I would be happy to share that with you. I'd be happy to, I equipped Jill with a packet, with a link to a folder that has all the collateral for the initial collateral for Stay Safe, Stay Connected. So if it would be helpful to you, Jen, or to anyone else, I can add that, that sort of call flow and the exact questions that are asked and sort of what path that takes people down. I can get that out to you.
I think that would be really helpful. Thank you very much.
Alicia, can I ask one thing of the group? Maybe they can put in chat section or think about. So we didn't know what we were naming ours, and we had talked. She already had Stay Safe, Stay Connected, and it just didn't resonate. So nothing against the Utah, because we love them, because we used a lot of their stuff. But we were trying to come up with something that resonated in minority communities, like just the populations, right, that we serve most. And it didn't sound like it was a parent thing, like that resonated with the parents. It sounded so much to me too close to what we were doing around COVID already. And so, we came up, we ended up putting 211 press 4 because we plan to do taglines with the 4. There's always going to have a more to it, right? Something around the 4. However, we are not, and I would say, and totally embedded in it since we are baking it and getting it off the ground. So in other communities, at one time, Alicia, what I had said was, does United Way have a name for this that they were thinking about that we could just use, because then we don't have to recreate the wheel. And if we're thinking about a national movement, it's the same thing. And so I would just throw that out. If people who have some ideas or thoughts about how we call this in our communities, I'm real open to that.
Great. So if people are doing anything similar, and you've got some ideas around some of those great names, go ahead, put them in the chat. We'd love to hear that. Let me turn and ask you all a question before we start to wind this down. Each of you has talked about, and each of you has been involved in the power of 211 during disaster. And of course, this COVID has been a different kind of disaster, but a disaster nonetheless. So I'm curious about, you've talked about some of the changes that you've made as a result of COVID. How do you envision that nimbleness and that agile, shifting of staffing to be a long-term? What lessons, insights have you gotten out of COVID? And even let me add to the subsequent but long-standing violence aimed at the African-American community, how that's changed, and how do you envision that becoming long-term as a part of your work for all of you? Easy question, right?
Yeah. I'll just kind of jump in. So it's interesting because I have been working with my team before this happened, talking about being prepared for a VUCA world, right? Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Because, and it's just what COVID threw us in. To some degree, it's what the unsettling and unrest happened around racial equity and social justice has thrown us in, right, as United Ways and as a community. And I would just challenge and say, I think that as organizations, we're all going to have to be nimble and agile in order to be able to navigate in a world of unknowns and uncertainties. Otherwise, we will become dinosaurs. And so either it's our opportunity, right, to lean in and figure out how do we add value to the equation of where the environment, we keep saying not where the puck is, but where the puck is going, and be thinking about that. Or we're going to be stagnant, and stagnant to me means at some point we're going to lose our relevance, even greater relevance, either on the United Way side or the 211 side. And so for us, I think it was an easy part of the equation. Earnestly, COVID has been one of the best things that has happened to us. We expanded our hours 7 days a week, but it elevated our work significantly throughout our state. It opened up doors that would have never have happened. The work that we in the United Way side have been doing around the racial equity and social justice has opened up a significant side. And we actually see our 211 Press 4 being a part of our equity solution. Right now, it is a subcommittee of our equity work that are helping to add legs to this, because ultimately we are trying to ensure that kids that are coming, that are most come from the most marginalized communities, right? Those that we know that already had an achievement gap, as we said, experiencing the recovery loss, experiencing the summer loss. It is a tsunami. And so it is an opportunity for us to think differently and creatively, collaboratively, true collective impact. Amy has that in her title, to work together in order to get better outcomes on behalf of kids. 211 adds one part of the equation, United Ways and other partners add another. So that's my response. And either we can lean into it, either they say, right, you know, or ultimately I think we're going to get left behind.
Yeah, 100% everything that Michelle said. And I don't see us ever going back to a different version of 211 or of our partnership in 211 connection. There's just too much that we're uncovering that is too awesome to, I think, ever have us backtrack. And I think as it relates to the equity work, you know, I think we think about it on two levels. One is, you know, to a large degree, getting families the resources that they need is a Band-Aid solution to underlying systems issues and to underlying inequitable systems. But we can do that connection work and that kind of frontline work as equitably as possible. And so we're challenging ourselves in that space. And then we're using what we learn through doing that to inform our longer term systems disruption and systems rebuild, and to make more equitable systems so that, you know what, it'd be great to work ourselves out of a job. It'd be great if 211 didn't need to exist, right? 10, 20, 30 years from now. So that's the goal, the two parallel, but deeply connected tracks that I see as super exciting.
Adriana.
Yeah, so from our perspective, I think that, you know, everything that we agree with everything that Michelle and Amy just said. I would also say though that, you know, we have the challenge again is for all of us to reimagine this system, but also be open to where it takes us and leverage the opportunities that come before us. And sometimes that can mean working on things that are not the most exciting, like, you know, I don't know, like we're going to have to advocate for how state agencies contract with nonprofits. Yay, contracting. That does not keep, you know, make me excited. But at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity there, right? We're going to have to advocate for, you know, the use of data, not just the value of data and how important it is, but the use of it. The accessibility and the transparency of data. So, you know, I think that we have to, as we move forward and again, turn the system upside down and think about where we can go with it. We have to think about different partners that haven't been at the table with us before. 211 has historically been in a box. Exactly what Michelle said about this being an opportunity, COVID presenting an opportunity for 211 to be out of the box and to be so much, like the opportunities, I think Amy said, are endless for 211. It's so exciting. And that's partly why I think Ralph got the excitement from me of just, we don't have the answers in Texas, but we're so excited about the opportunities that this presents. But we have to push ourselves and to answer a question that was asked about school districts and how to open their mind. One thing I would suggest is that lean into the United Way network, lean into the Campaign for Grade Level Reading network to learn about what other systems are doing. And they don't have to fit 100% what you're doing. Like, right? Like what little nugget can you learn from Utah? What little nugget can you learn from Delaware that's really going to resonate in Texas or in Illinois or wherever it is that you're working? So it's an exciting time for 211. I'm really looking forward to having maybe this conversation in 3 years from now and looking back and hoping that we're telling a very different story because I think, again, like we're at an exciting point in time for 211 and for United Ways and for our communities.
I appreciate that. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate. Muchísimas gracias to all of you. I'm going to give each of you in one breath, what advice or closing comments do you want to make to the group? I'll start with you, Amy.
Oh, I knew you were going to pick me first. I think lean in to the challenge in front of your community and think about the infrastructure that you have in your 211 system and partners. And it is possible to have it not take 3 years of planning to get something new off the ground. Like Michelle and I, our teams, we have proved it. It can be done. It's not perfect, but really, you know, you can make something that is viable and important and helpful.
Thank you. Adriana, and then Michelle, you bring us on home.
So I think embrace the imperfection. I think 211, at least in Texas, there's so often there's this, you know, but it's not this, right? Or it's not, there's always seems to be, you know, it's not a perfect system, but it is the system we have. And it is an amazing opportunity to leverage a system. It's an amazing opportunity to leverage this system. And so let's embrace it, even if it's not perfect, and try to find a way to make it work for all of our communities, all of our families with young kids.
Michelle.
Yeah, I'll just say this I shared with my board to say, I don't want to go back to pre-COVID as it relates to 211, right? You know, we want this momentum and the focus and to keep accelerating. And so I would just tell you, don't overthink it, you know. But think of the definition of insanity. Stop trying to do the same things over and over again and expecting different results. And I think this is our moment in time to shine. The country is watching us. If you listen, some of you might have heard Brian Gallagher. We had our rally yesterday for the 211s, right, which was phenomenal, right? And so there's still a lot of work to go ahead of us, but pace matters. And sometimes there's other competitors out there. You heard him say that. And so, you know, we've been doing this work and we're in the game. And sometimes it does matter who gets to the finish line first.
Well done. Well done. Jill, I'm going to turn it over to you. I really want to thank Amy and Michelle and Adriana, all of you. What powerful questions. Jill, I mean, it was great having people jump into the fishbowl. So
we were building
that.
We were building the plane as we flew it. This was fun. We were the people behind the scenes felt like we were in a radio show or something. We've never done something quite like this before. So thanks so much. And Alicia, do you want to have any last thoughts, takeaways from your side as you heard the last hour and a half?
No, I just love these people. I would ask yourselves, what does that 21st century 211 look like? What is that partnership? The power. I think everyone is saying the same thing. 211 is a powerful, powerful resource for good. And how can we move forward and not go back?
Yeah. No, that was a clear theme. And you know, the people on the line and the people on the screen, I think, are at the forefront of really wanting to make 211 all that it can be, and to make it as relevant as possible to parents and to families across this country. So I just want to very much echo the thanks. Jerry, would you mind pulling up we just have a couple quick closing things we want to show you all as we get to the top of the hour. So Jerry's going to share the screen. The campaign wants to thank Alicia, Amy, Michelle, Adriana, very, very much for your time and for stepping into this fishbowl and creating the fishbowl for us to now be what does Ralph say, stealing shamelessly, or making sure that we use this format in the future. I think will be something we'll really be trying to do. We want to thank our enterprise investors to the campaign. You can see the ones from the last 2 fiscal years are listed there. Thank you very, very much to our sponsors. To the next slide for GLR Week, the Bain Family Foundation, the Bezos Family Foundation, Heinz Endowments, PBS Ready to Learn Initiative, the Annie Casey Foundation, and the Winco Foundation. So thanks very much to our sponsors for GLR Week. And then lastly, we want to make another plug for our Funder to Funder conversation series. One has already happened, 2 more are taking place on the coming Tuesdays at the same time, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 Pacific. And we really hope you can join them. We will be including links to register for these and for GLR Learning Tuesdays and for the rest of GLR week in our subsequent emails that we send out post-session. So thank you all very, very much. This has just been a tremendous opportunity for the campaign to lift up a really important topic, and really appreciate everyone on the line for weighing in and participating with us. We hope you have a really good rest of your day. Stay safe and healthy, and hope to see you at GLR weeks and events coming this week. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.